Zontes Z703F Adventure, a 21-inch adventure tourer with a triple engine for under 10,000 euros. Could that actually work? That's what we're here to find out today. Hello and greetings from beautiful Lower Austria after what's been a really great and varied day of riding with the Zontes Z703F Adventure. From now on, I'll just call it the Zontes 703. It's quite an interesting package, mainly because of some pretty unique technical features, especially when you consider where it's from, Far East China. And in terms of design, I have to say, today with my outfit on, I kind of felt like one of those speeders or stormtroopers on Endor. You know, that scene where Leia has a bit of a chase on those speeders. That's kind of the vibe this thing gives off. The centerpiece of the Zontes 703F Adventure is its all-new 3-cylinder engine, a rare setup in the adventure touring segment or even touring bikes in general. The big names here would obviously be Yamaha with the CP3 engine in the Tracer 9 and Triumph's Tiger 900 GT Pro and Rally Pro. You could also mention the MV Agusta Turismo Veloce, but that's pretty much it. So it's genuinely exciting that Zontes has come out with an entirely newly developed engine of their own. The key figures are 699 cubic centimeters, 95 horsepower at 10,000 RPM and 79 Newton meter of torque at 7,500 RPM. Our measured weight came in at 237 kilos. In terms of dimensions, it's a fairly typical adventure tourer. You've got 180 millimeters of suspension travel with a fully adjustable Marzocchi setup. Seat height is 845 millimeters and it's running proper adventure style tires, 90-90-21 up front and 150-70-18 at the rear. So yeah, it's potentially ready for some serious off-road rubber. But just to be clear, today's test ride was almost entirely on tarmac. I did venture briefly onto a gravel path, but that was about it. Definitely an interesting machine. If you want all the technical specs, check the video description. That's where I've linked everything. And later on we'll talk more about the features, because I think that's actually the main reason why you might want to take a closer look at the Zontes. I'm talking about the combination of the engine specs and the incredibly generous equipment you get for the price. We're talking well below 10,000 euros here. The RRP in Austria is 990 euros, but I've already seen deals for brand new Zontes 703 at around 9,500. And back in 2024, there was even a German price that dropped below 8,000 euros. So yeah, when we get to the equipment section, you'll see why that's such a big deal. But for now, to really understand what this thing feels like to ride, I'll hop on the saddle and give you my first impressions from behind the bars. Alright, here I am back in the saddle of the Zontes Z703F Adventure. Let's talk about how it rides. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed. This bike handles really decently. It's not without its quirks, sure, but we'll get to those in a moment as I cruise along these beautiful streets, nice and relaxed. Relaxed is exactly how I want to start this off. The gears are nice and elastic, typical for a triple. You can ride it in a really high gear at low speeds, as I'll show you right here at this next junction. Super smooth, no juddering, no hesitation. It just pulls away cleanly even from low revs. So, Third gear now, doing around 20 kilometers per hour and still totally composed. That's a good sign. As for the handling, yeah, of course you can feel the 21-inch front wheel. It needs a bit of input through the wide handlebars. The seating position is proper adventure touring style, neutral, arms stretched forward, but I think it lets you lean into corners quite nicely. It works. It rides very much like other large adventure bikes, also weight-wise. We measured it at 237 kilos fully fueled with its 22-liter tank, which puts it right up there with bikes like the Africa Twin. So yeah, all good so far, right? We're heading into some twistier roads now, so let's push a bit. I think the suspension does a great job. This fully adjustable Marzocchi setup, still a reputable name. It strikes a solid balance between comfort and stability. If you brake hard, sure, the front dips a bit, but nothing extreme. When picking up the pace, you do have to work the bars a bit for quicker direction changes, but it's all well within reason. Now, on this descent, and especially with these tighter hairpins coming up, lean angle is fine for an adventure bike, but yeah, you'll start scraping bits pretty quickly if you're pushing. Overall, front end feedback feels alright, though the upright and relaxed ergonomics do mean you lose a bit of connection. What really knocks my confidence when riding downhill though is this right here. The braking zone. You need quite a bit of hand strength to get serious stopping power out of the front brake. Funny thing is, the rear brake's the opposite. Very little effort and travel needed to get it biting. But up front, you've got to pull hard and the lever travels a lot before you get real braking force. It's not a massive issue if you're just cruising around at a relaxed pace. Totally fine for that. But yeah, earlier on I was riding a bit more spiritedly, and that's when you suddenly find yourself wishing for more bite from the front. Especially if you're braking a bit late into a corner, your eyes do widen for a second when you realize the front's just not delivering the performance you were expecting. Right, I think we've made it down now. I'm going to turn around and next we'll take a closer look at how the engine performs. Zack. All right, quick U-turn here. There we go. Now, the weight is okay for an adventure tourer, but it's still on the heavier side. Especially considering we're not dealing with a huge engine here. It's a 699 cubic centimeter motor, which means a high compression ratio of 13.1. And yeah, the engine really has to work to move this weight. Right now I'm in fourth gear and we're well below a third of the rev range. Nothing much happening. You really need to drop down a gear. So now third gear at 50 kilometers per hour, and it still takes a moment before the Zontes picks up. Which brings us to the obvious solution. Drop it into first, and there it is. First gear makes a big difference. Keeping it in a low gear is the way to go if you want some proper response. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite match the rest of the riding experience. You see that? You get a fair bit of drivetrain lash, and I'm not claiming to have the world's most delicate throttle hand, but I don't think I'm particularly clumsy either. Still, even in eco mode, which is supposed to be the softer one, you can feel it. Now I'm switching over to sport mode, heading into the next hairpin in first gear again. You see it? Yeah, it's not exactly pleasant, so I've started riding mainly in second because it's noticeably smoother and less snatchy. But of course, that comes with a trade-off. This engine needs a bit of time to build momentum. That means you lose some punch when you're riding more spiritedly. But at regular touring speeds and in the kind of riding you'd usually do with a big adventure bike, it's totally fine. Still, those on-off throttle transitions remain a bit annoying. On the plus side, the quick shifter, which only works on upshifts and still uses a cable throttle, works surprisingly well. It's properly sorted. Sometimes there's a noticeable jolt, but other times it's super smooth. So yeah, thumbs up for that. The clutch is nice and light too, so with a bit of throttle blipping, downshifting works just fine as well. All in all, the engine doesn't feel as punchy as some of the other 3-cylinder motors in the adventure touring class. But to be fair, most of those have more peak power anyway. Still, it feels good overall. Out on the road, the Zontes 703 comes across as a solid, properly capable adventure tourer. A properly solid bike, I'd say. I've now had a bit more time in the saddle of the Zontes, so I want to add a few more thoughts on how it rides. Overall though, I stick with my opinion is that it's a really well-rounded package. These Chinese manufacturers are pushing harder and harder into the European motorcycle market, and I think by now we're seeing a huge range when it comes to quality. Some of these bikes are honestly miles behind what we're used to, but then there are brands like CF Moto and apparently Zontes as well. This is actually the first Zontes I've ridden, and it's already at a level where there's really not much missing anymore. Usually it's the finer details where there's still a bit of polishing needed, and that's the case with the Zontes too, I'd say. But even here we're talking about a level where I think for a lot of riders out there, those small shortcomings won't actually feel like real weaknesses, or at least nothing major, with a few reservations though. So what else stood out to me? Well, I already mentioned the brakes. The front brake in itself actually has a nice progressive feel, but you do need a bit too much hand strength to bring this fairly hefty bike to a stop, especially if you want to brake a bit more aggressively or ride in a sporty way. What really stood out though is how the ABS regulates. It's not quite up there with the top tier systems from well-known manufacturers. It's a bit rough around the edges. You can tell it's a bit crude in how it intervenes. For example, when the front ABS kicks in, you notice your arms starting to vibrate slightly. And on the rear, you feel it especially when braking into a corner, maybe already with a slight lean as you're tipping in. That's when the rear ABS cuts in a bit harshly and the back end starts to twitch slightly, gets a bit unsettled. But to be fair, you'd really have to be pushing it pretty hard for that to become a real issue. So like I said, it's not a major problem in practice. Now looking at the other side of the riding experience, acceleration, the throttle response and especially the drivetrain lash are for me still the biggest weak points. The way the Zontes handles throttle transitions in first gear, regardless of whether you're in eco or sport mode, is just a bit too abrupt. It's there, and at times it's actually quite jerky. Same with the quick shifter, it can vary quite a bit in how smooth or rough it feels. But in my case, it was jerky enough that I started avoiding using first gear altogether in really tight hairpins. I just wouldn't roll on the throttle at the apex in first, it felt too harsh. Second gear, on the other hand, responded much more gently and predictably. So yeah, this is an area where there's still some room for improvement in future model updates. And also, the quick shifter itself didn't work perfectly in the lower rev range, especially below around 3,500 revs. It sometimes just refuses to shift up. And when it does, there's a noticeable jolt. It's a bit rough overall. At higher revs though, when you keep the throttle open a bit, which you tend to do anyway given the engine's characteristics, it works much better. Because like I mentioned before, this engine doesn't have loads of torque in the mid-range, and it doesn't really pull that hard low down either, at least not compared to something like Yamaha's CP3 inline triple. So you naturally end up riding it at slightly higher revs, holding the throttle open a bit longer, and in that range the quick shifter actually works really well. Most of the time it's smooth and does exactly what it should. Lastly, I've got to mention the sound while riding and actually give it some praise. Up to a point it's really distinctive. There's this deep sonorous growl to it. You also get a clear difference between off throttle and when you're accelerating. As soon as you roll on the throttle, it instantly grows into this throaty roar, which to be fair, sounds pretty cool. It actually sounds really good, but it's bordering on too loud, kind of like that Ferrari that just tore past behind the camera. Over time though, especially if you're more in touring mode, riding relaxed in a high gear, you still constantly hear that deep booming tone from the Zontes. It's always there, and that's something you've got to be okay with. For me, it's neither a strength nor a weakness, just a matter of taste. And with that, we come to what is arguably the Zontes' real strength, its equipment for the price, because in that regard it actually starts to compete with the top-tier adventure bikes, even though it's nowhere near their price point. First up on the list of features, the keyless system. You just press the little button here and the Zontes fires right up. It also shuts off again really quickly, so there's no need to worry, unlike with some models from much more well-known manufacturers, where the ignition can stay on forever after you walk away from the bike, or sometimes doesn't switch off at all. It really works just like it should. Once you walk about 1.5 meters away, which is roughly the range where the key remains active, 5 to 10 seconds later you'll hear a beep from the Zontes and it switches itself off. It even locks the handlebars automatically. So as soon as you turn the bars to the left, it engages the steering lock too. Second feature, heated grips as standard. Always a welcome addition. Unfortunately, no cruise control since the throttle still works via a traditional cable setup, which makes fitting a cruise control system more difficult. But what else do you get? A nice TFT display with loads of features, including 4 different layout options. Of course, full LED lighting is standard too, and there's a fully adjustable electric windscreen that can be raised or lowered without steps. I did a bit of motorway riding earlier, and at 1.85 meters I can say that in the highest position the wind is directed completely over the top of my helmet. You do still get a bit of wind and turbulence around the shoulders, so the wind protection isn't perfect. There could definitely be more shielding to keep your shoulders out of the airflow. In the lowest position the wind hits me roughly at eyebrow or forehead level. But overall, wind protection is actually quite decent. The TFT screen also offers smartphone connectivity and even supports 3D map navigation. And here's something interesting. If you come around to the front of the bike, you'll see dash cams fitted as standard, both front and rear. You can set them up to start recording automatically as soon as you turn on the ignition. So right now, for example, the front camera is already filming. All the footage gets stored in 1-minute clips on the Zontes built-in 128 GB memory in full HD quality. That's actually really handy, whether it's for checking back in case of an accident or just if you want to save a cool bit of footage. It looks great too. If you're pushing the pace a bit, that first-person dashcam footage of carving through bends looks seriously slick. A very cool feature overall. The clips recorded by these dashcams can be accessed in 2 ways, either through the menu, which I'm navigating to now, or via the Zontes app. You'll need the app anyway for all the other connectivity features. From there you can download the clips and use them however you like. And the camera also records while the bike is stationary, which means you'll inevitably end up with loads of clips where the bike's just sitting still. I'm having a quick look now to see if I can find one from while riding. Nah, doesn't look like it. Here we go. This is what it looks like. Full HD footage, complete with date and timestamps. And yep, you can transfer that straight to your phone if you want. Quick break from the test ride to talk about the exciting new Caberg helmet, a brand we're featuring for the very first time in one of our reviews. Casca di Bergamo, as it's called, comes from Bergamo in Italy. It's a fiberglass helmet available in 2 shell sizes, weighs between 1,530 and 1,580 grams, and of course it's certified to the ECE 2206 standard. Why am I bringing it up? Well, it's got a few features I've never seen before. For example, since it's designed for both on-road and off-road use, it comes with vent covers that are held in place magnetically. That means you can pop them off really easily with just one hand and get extra airflow when the temperature rises. And secondly, there's a chip embedded in the back of the helmet. Any smartphone with NFC can be held up to it, and it opens the Caberg website, where not only can you access the user manual, but after creating an account, you can store your emergency contact info and SOS numbers. So if you're ever found after an accident, even a complete stranger could tap their phone to the helmet and instantly access all your emergency data. Really interesting helmet. If you want to know more, I've linked everything down in the video description. We've also got, since I'm just looking at the tires, a tire pressure monitoring system and even a temperature display for the tires. That's quite interesting actually. I haven't seen that on many bikes before. It comes with tubeless rims as standard. The stock tires are from meters, and I already mentioned the dimensions earlier. Something else I really like, the turn signals are integrated into the handguards. And not only that, the mirrors on the handguards are also prepped for a blind spot warning system. That's a feature you usually only see on premium adventure bikes, and you can actually retrofit it if you want. Like I said, there's a lot on here that you'd expect from the high-end segment, and even some things beyond that, like this at the back. I've never seen anything like it. It's a really neat little storage compartment, nicely integrated into the design, where you can stash a few things. And from what I've seen in the accessories list, though I haven't confirmed if it's already available, you can even fit an auxiliary fuel tank in there. The only question is, do you really need it? Because with Zontes claiming a fuel consumption of under 5 liters per 100 kilometer and a 22-liter tank, you're already looking at a seriously respectable range of over 400 kilometers. So yeah, do you need the extra tank? Probably not. But still, it's a neat little extra. Adjustable levers at the front, both brake and clutch. Also not something you see on every bike. And small touches like a folding gear lever, think 1300 GS. Again, not something you get as standard everywhere. Quick word on off-road use. The standing position is clearly geared towards touring. You can only deactivate the ABS at the rear. And to do that, you have to go into the menu, which is a bit fiddly. Traction control, on the other hand, can be turned off with a long press of the button. Nice and simple. So yeah, for light off-road use, I'd say it's absolutely suitable. The suspension travel isn't especially long, so it's not built for proper hardcore off-roading. That said, it does come with a solid aluminum bash plate as standard, which is a nice touch. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the center stand, which comes as standard. Also, the seat can be unlocked at the press of a button, making it super easy to remove. And down here in the cockpit, coming a bit closer with the camera, this bit's really nicely done, well integrated, with this rubber flap that stays attached so you don't lose it. Inside, you've already got a standard USB-A and USB-C port included. And in case you're wondering what this dial here is, it's for adjusting the angle of the TFT display. So all in all, as you can see, there's a wide mix of small touches and proper features here, things you just don't usually get at this price point. Fully adjustable suspension, good handling characteristics. Honestly, for under 10,000 euros, if you're looking at other bikes in this category, you're often ending up with smaller, less powerful machines in the 40 to 80 horsepower range. And you definitely won't get this level of equipment. I mean, just look at the Suzuki DRZ, it's now pushing close to 10,000 euros. So you really are getting a lot for your money here. And at the same time, I think the Zontes has very few real weaknesses. And even those are pretty easy to forgive once you keep the price in mind. Of course, it takes more than decent riding performance and a long spec list to convince someone to buy a bike from China. That's something everyone has to decide for themselves. But purely in terms of value for money, it's pretty impressive what you're getting for each euro here. And now I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments if the Zontes Z703F Adventure is something you'd find interesting, especially when you consider that a full-blown triple engine isn't something you see too often. I think it's a great engine concept, whether you're riding on the road or doing a bit of light off-roading. It's genuinely fun to ride. You just have to rev it a bit more to get it going. All in all, it's been a great day in the saddle of the Zontes 703. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye, and until next time.